everybody. Welcome to Rachel's Reviews and Theater Tuesday. And today we have a very special treat. I have with me my former teacher. It's so exciting.
The best of times.
Yes, we have Dave Smith with us, the Director of Education, Associate Resident Director, I believe that the correct title.
That's right.
At Hale Center Theatre in Sandy. And thank you so much, Dave, for coming on the podcast.
Yes, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
This is really fun because I have been a big fan of your work for so long, and you were a teacher of mine at one point, and so I don't really know that much about you, so this is going to be kind of fun to get to learn. And so this is your first time on the podcast, so you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about how you got started in the world of musical theater.
Absolutely, yeah. So my story actually falls very similar to that of High School Musical. Before High School Musical became a thing, I have a family that, of course, we always grew up singing, and that's always been a part of my life. But theater was something that kind of came a little bit later for me. As in high school, and I was on the school basketball team, and I was very heavy into sports at the time. And through a series of injuries, I was kind of taken out of the season, and my brother dared me to audition for the musical that was happening at my school at the time. And I was like,
what was the show? Do you remember?
It was South Pacific. I will never forget, because it was the show that changed my life. As a freshman in high school, and I played Lieutenant Cable, and lots of stories that go along with that. I mean, it was for me also like the whole story of like having to play romantically opposite of somebody else on stage as a 14-year-old, and not knowing what that entailed, because there's two different love interests in that story. And so I watched as Emil and Nellie had their moment and they kissed on stage, and I was like, they're really kissing on stage. And they're like, well, Dave, yeah, you're gonna have to do that too. I was like, what? And I'd never kissed a girl in my life. Like, I was like, I had a panic attack about it. But that show completely changed and altered my path in life. Of course, it was my drama teacher. She was such a huge supporter and said stuff, to me that had stayed with me to this day. Just, when I was trying to decide if I should go back the next year into doing basketball, or if I should start pursuing more of the musical theater dance kind of stuff. And she said, you know what, sports, there'll be a time where you won't be able to do that anymore. But if you do theater, she's like, I promise you will do it the rest of your life. And I was like, whoa. And here I am. Like, it's still an intricate part of my life, and I'll probably do it the rest of my life. And he set me on that path. And so I studied theater the rest of the time in high school, and then in college I studied music, because music is, I love theater, I love storytelling, but I love music in the way that it helps to bring a different level of communication to storytelling, and it touches people's hearts in a way that words don't do. You know what I mean? Like, backing it up with music, it's the coolest universal thing that brings people together. And I have always loved songwriting and film scoring, and so I studied commercial music in college, and been lucky enough to also get to incorporate a lot of that in my career as well, of getting to write music. And so anyway, while I was in college, I started working at the Hale Center Theatre in Orem, as an actor first, and then in the box office, and then kind of worked my way up. And then after a while, I was their kind of chief financial officer, and then financial assistant, and then I was helping with the education stuff. I became a voice teacher there after studying voice as my instrument in college, and I have such a passion for theater education and for coaching. And during that time, I started my directing career actually at an elementary school in Provo. They were looking for a couple people to kind of help with some of their summer programs of doing some summer theater. And so started off doing that with my wife, Brittany, who also is a drama teacher. She's been teaching for 15 years. And
did you guys meet like doing a show, or?
Yeah. So
I love that.
We actually met doing my very first show at the Hale Center Theatre in Orem. She was working there as an usher. And back in that day, the ushers were also in charge of doing quick changes and doing all of the backstage stuff. And so we met because she was helping me change during a quick change during Forever Plaid at the Hale and Orem. And then the next summer we were in a show at the Sierra together that Jerry Elison directed. We were in Oklahoma, and we started dating after that. And we just kept playing opposite of each other. We did West Side Story together, and we did Fiddler on the Roof together, and Oliver, Beauty and the Beast. And we just kept playing opposite each other. We're like, well, we seem to have a lot of good chemistry on stage.
That's so cute. I love that.
So yeah, we met doing theater, and so she still teaches, and we started doing Westridge Elementary School stuff, and then they brought me on as a teacher during the school year. And then from there, American Fork Youth Theater brought me on to start directing for them, and I directed youth theater for them for about 8 years. And then the Hale Center Theatre, while I was working with them, were like, you seem to be working at all these other places doing youth theater. Why don't you come do ours? And at the time, they were doing I think 2 shows a year, one during the summer and then Youth Christmas Carol every year. And as I came on, we expanded it to a full season. And so now at the Hale and Orem, they do 5 shows a year and have a pretty extensive education program, which I was lucky enough to be a part of. And so anyway, a couple of years ago, I was offered a job up here at the Hale Center to kind of help promote their education program and to offer some support in the directing realm. And it's been incredible to be up here. Just wonderful people, talented people, and love getting to help be a part of the program that's happening here. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Yeah. Are you a fan of Rachel's Reviews? Do you look forward to Family Movie Night, Female Film Critics Panels, or the Talking Disney podcast? If so, please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a Patreon. As a patron, you get to access monthly events such as the watch-alongs and Q&As, where you get to talk to stars and find out the behind the scenes of the movie making industry. And you can pick what I review for Family Movie Night or even become a guest on the podcast. Podcasts and YouTube channels are expensive, and I really, really could use your help. I would so appreciate it. You also get to be a member of the Facebook group where we talk about all the films that we're seeing, and we have so much fun. Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies and select one of the Rachel's fan tiers. That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies. Well, I'm so glad that you had a teacher in high school that was willing to sort of nurture your talent and help you, because that was something that was a bit of a challenge for me, because my choral teacher was very intent about having the best vocal ensemble and the best choir and which I'm not saying that's bad, but she was very like, this is a talented person, this is a not talented person, these are the people that are going to be make my choir good. And she failed miserably to nurture talent. And I thought for a long time that I was just not a good singer. And that's what inspired me to start taking the voice lessons, just because I really enjoyed singing, but I didn't think that I was particular. I'm not saying I'm like the greatest singer in the world, but I just wanted to get beyond that and move past it. And that's where we met, is that I was taking classes just for fun. And it was such a wonderful experience to, like, I think my first recital, I did not want to do it because I just didn't think I was good. And, and so to do the recitals, and we have some actually on my channel, I have a few of them saved, to do them and to get positive feedback and people, you did a really good job. And it made me feel so good. And I think that must be something that you think about as you do so many youth productions, like that you work on, is that it is important that you have a good show, and that I can understand why you want to be the best, like in your job and in your career. But I always think back to that was I spent years thinking that I was a bad singer.
And that's heartbreaking, because that's the coolest gift that all of us have as humans, is a voice. You know what I mean? And yeah, everybody has different levels and skills and then natural abilities, but what a great gift that we are all born with an instrument that we can use to express ourselves with. And it's, to me, singing should be way more of a personal journey rather than a comparative journey.
Mm.
of others, and so it is sad that there are people that don't help to cultivate the right culture with singing, that it should be joyous. It should be a joyful thing for anybody to do, and it shouldn't be about, well, this person's voice is better than this person, because if you get, that's a black hole, you know what I mean? Like, there will always be somebody, but it's also subjective, like all art forms. We all
Yeah.
have uh different tastes of the kind of tone that we like, but we should just love to do it. We should just love to sing, you know what I mean? And everybody can find on their own journey ways to improve themselves and to make their instrument better. But it's just like any other instrument, like there's going to be better piano players out there than others, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't learn. We shouldn't want to have that in our lives. And that's been a huge thing for me, like education, like you said, like any person that has ended up doing this, it all started because they had a mentor that nurtured it in them, because nobody would just do this. It's hard work, and it's people think, oh, it's just glamorous, it's great, but like, theater is also something that will take and take and take from you if you let it. Like, you have to find a way to balance out your life, and you have to love it in a way, and the only way that happens is if somebody shows you the love that you can have with it. And so I that's one of my greatest missions whenever I'm doing theater. I love doing youth theater, and I get to work a lot with adults as well, and I love producing really great theater, but there's something special about working with the youth. They're so eager. A lot of the inhibitions we create as adults aren't there yet, and it's a pure time where they still remember how to play. And that's what we do in theater, is we imagine, we create, we put each other, we create characters and put on costumes. Like, those are things we do as kids, and I love that they still are in the realm where that's not beyond them, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? But I love their eagerness to learn, their pureness. I love also the way that youth teach us, because one of the biggest reasons I do theater is I've seen so many moments where I've seen theater be a great teaching tool for people, and it's a great way to uplift others.
Mhm.
And I have been the most inspired when I've seen incredibly talented youth out on a stage teaching adults about life. It's like the most inspiring thing. I remember the first time I saw Matilda in London. I remember the first time I saw the touring company of School of Rock. All of these shows that really showcase kids and their abilities. Those are the most powerful stories to me, the most
Yeah.
powerful moments in life. So it's a huge passion of mine, and I'm grateful. And that's the cool thing, is that it doesn't really matter where you are in life. You can always jump in and be a part of the community of theater, which is pretty magical. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes I almost prefer the sort of regional, imperfect, flawed people trying, that community spirit that you have in a show, almost more than sometimes the glossy equity
Mhm,
productions. There's just
mhm,
something special about it
mhm.
that I really love.
It's because I think when you're going to something like that, the expectation instead of, we are
Yeah,
delivering you a product. So it's like, okay, I better like this product I paid for. But with
it's
community,
true.
you feel like you're a part of the whole thing. As an audience
Yeah.
member, you feel more like you're a part of the cast than you do if you are coming to watch a really polished product. You know what I mean? I think that's
Hmm.
what I love, going to see community and being a part of community productions like that. There's way more camaraderie in the audience. It probably feels to me like what it would have felt like to be a part of a Shakespearean play, to come in and just
Hmm.
like, this feels like the synergy is real between the audience and the actors, and they're all there to support each other. And it's really
Yeah,
cool.
it's true.
So.
Yeah, definitely. So do you remember like the first musical on Broadway or Broadway like that you ever saw?
Yeah. So when I was younger, there were a couple of different shows that really sparked me. When I was living in Nashville during my elementary school years, my parents got a season ticket to a local kind of touring facility. And I remember seeing a couple shows there. Um, Funny enough, one of them that really stuck in my mind was when I saw Jekyll and Hyde for the first time. And as a
Mm.
kid, way too dark. I would never suggest anybody bring their kids to see that show, but
I
I
just saw
rem
it actually for the first time, believe it or not.
oh,
In
really?
yeah, I mean I knew the cast recording and everything, but yeah, I just saw it in Draper. It was unbelievable. Such an amazing production.
Yeah.
I
But even
couldn't
as a
believe, I mean, for
kid,
this dinky little theater, I could not believe the quality of the singing and the production, and it was so good.
I mean, we live in a really cool place in Utah. There's so much amazing talent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just remember like how even as a kid, the impact that show had as far as like allowing me to like feel, the fear
Yeah.
in that and the cool effects. But two other shows that I saw when I was little, I saw Joseph in Chicago when I was visiting my uncle there. It was one of the first shows I'd seen, and like that
That'll
soundtrack
make an
became
impact.
it would, yeah. It was Donny Osmond tour, seeing kids on stage, as well, like, oh my gosh, this is something for all ages. And then of course that soundtrack became the broken record in my house.
Yeah.
But then the coolest one that I saw, while I was in Toronto visiting my grandparents, there was a production of Forever Plaid performing there, and I was about 8 years old, and I saw that show, and that one also completely changed my life. And getting to be, and that was the first show I ever did at the Hale, and since then I've played Smudge in 4 different productions between the regular Forever Plaid and Plaid Tidings, the Christmas show. Plaid has this really special place in my heart. I love barbershop, but I love the way that music is. The show is all about music and how music brings people together. It creates memories, nostalgia. It can be humorous. It just does so much.
That was the first show that Hale Sandy did, right? If am I
It
remembering?
was.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
actually, yeah. In their Jewel Box stage, it was the very first show they opened up. And so those were 3 specific moments as a kid. I remember seeing a show for the first time and being completely enamored by it.
Yeah.
And thinking,
That's so
that's
cool.
cool. So
yeah, I got a tape from my grandma, which was the best of Andrew Lloyd Webber when I was like 9, 10. And it was, the walk and talk of my life for a while. And then we went and saw in San Francisco, saw Phantom of the Opera with my grandma. And
wow.
Yeah, so that was the first kind of that's on that scale. And then when I was in high school, I was totally obsessed with Les Mis. Like the 10-year anniversary concert had just come out.
Iconic.
And I knew literally every line to every song. If they had needed a swing or understudy at any moment, I could have.
Yep.
I knew that whole show, and I absolutely just loved it. It's definitely that the Little Mermaid in 1989 and Les Mis in high school. Those are the 2 like formative pieces of media in my life.
There's nothing better than, those are like the most powerful pieces in musical theater. That's the way to do it. I mean, it was a simpler time back then. You'd have the VHS and like something came on PBS. Like I remember when that concert came on PBS, we'd stuck that in and push record. So we had, and it had all of the little interruptions with the telemarketing people being like, we're taking money. But like, I watched that 10-year anniversary concert over and over and over again.
Yeah. We had the choice. This choir that I was in, we had the choice of whether to see Les Mis or Cats.
Les Mis, hands down.
I've still never seen Cats. I'd like to, but just for the heck of it, to see it one of these days. But it was a clear choice.
Yeah, we my junior year in high school, we took a tour with my choir to New York and saw Les Mis as well. And so that's just one of those shows that always sticks with you.
Well, and I just thought it was such kismet because I was like, for me, I was like traumatized by the closure of the theaters. That was just during the pandemic. That was extremely devastating for me. And I just made a commitment. I was like, I'm going to support it as much as I possibly can when this ends, because this is not going down on my watch. And I just felt like it was such kismet that, so I get vaccinated. I wait the 2 weeks. That was the recommendation at the time. And the first show that I see is Les Mis at Hale.
Oh, wow.
Which was just amazing.
So powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful. That's super cool. That's a cool thing.
Yeah. And
hey, this is Jen Johans, host of the podcast Watch with Jen, which delivers a steady stream of great movie recommendations, thoughtful career deep dives, and first-rate conversations with film critics, authors, actors, journalists, filmmakers, and more. You can find Watch with Jen wherever you get your podcasts or hear us first at our Patreon at patreon.com/filmintuition.
So I have to ask about Daddy Longlegs.
Mhm.
So I saw you in it at Hale
Mhm.
and then they did it for Hale at Home. How did that all happen and come together? Because that was very meaningful to me to be able to watch that during the pandemic. And I just love this show so much. I think it is so underrated, and I love Daddy Longlegs.
Yeah. You know, that the pandemic was as everybody for everybody, but for theaters, that was a tough time.
Yeah.
I think straight across the board. And it took people like you and like others that were like, we gotta hang on, we gotta find a way to make this work. And the producers at the Hale and Orem were gung-ho, and they were very creative, and just had a sit-down meeting being like, let's find a way to bring theater to people. And so the reason why Daddy Longlegs happened was out of necessity. It was like the rules were you cannot have more than 10 people in a room together, at the time. And so we were like, that really limits the kind of shows that we can do, and so
Yeah.
but we had recently done Daddy Longlegs, and it was a huge, wonderful response from audience members for that. And luckily both Kelly and I were working full-time for the theater, and that was the other thing too, is like they wanted to take care of us. The producers were like, we don't want to be without all these employees without a job, and
Yeah.
so they were just creating like, what can we do with the people we've got here that are on our payroll that we could put together. And so Kelly and I happened to have done this show, and we're like, let's do this. We're already working together. We'll quarantine together. Let's bring this back for the audiences. And it was special, I think, for everybody, for me to just having it be that show where it's done through letters, and it's people that are living in separate lives but are still feeling very connected through their writing.
Yeah.
There was something really special about that during the pandemic that brought some hope, you know what I mean, to everything. And yeah, that show it's a special show.
Ugh, I love it so much. And I think people think, oh, because the movie is like a little weird, with like Fred Astaire and Leslie, I think it's Leslie Crone. But in the show, she just thinks he's old. He's not actually old.
Right.
So it works perfect.
Gets a little creepier in the Fred Astaire movie.
Yeah. And I love the songs, and it must just be like incredibly intimidating because it's only the two of you, and that's a lot to learn.
I'm not gonna lie, the first time we did it in Orem, I was super nervous about it. Yeah. I was like, I honestly don't know if I have the capacity for this. And the biggest regret I have was wasting any time thinking I shouldn't or I can't do that show, because it like I said, it just changed my heart. Like it kind of wrapped itself into my soul, and became one of those shows that it will always be one of my all-time favorites. So,
and it's at least a fan favorite here in Utah, because I did a video on my channel on underrated Broadway musicals, and I included it in there. And when I posted in the Utah Theater Lovers group I was just asking for their opinions of what they think are underrated, and I had used that as an example, a picture of Daddy Longlegs, and everybody was like, I love that show. I love that show. I love that show. It's so good. Yeah. The songs are really good. It's just, yeah.
It's really well crafted, because most people come into it and they're nervous. They're like, how are two people going to keep me engaged, enough? But it just shows you like the incredible writing of that, the subtext, because so much of it again is just the letters that are from the book. But the way that they're done, the passages they use, and the way that they use the music to help give you a little bit more personal personable nature to those letters. So
Yeah.
it doesn't just feel like you're just hearing people talk about things that happened off stage. That could be the most boring kind of theater. It's really this crazy stars aligning moment in that show where you really get to know these two on a personal level, but it's also intriguing to see where it's gonna go between them. And you never feel that as you're watching it. You never feel this feeling of like, I'm just still here with these two guys on stage, just bored on my mind. It's just really well crafted show.
Yeah, it really is. Was it fun to then revisit it again at Sandy after the pandemic?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because their characters are so in depth and because you spend so much time on this journey with them, getting to extend that and find deeper meaning every time you do it is super cool. You don't often get to play roles like that where you get to dive that deep into a character and a relationship between two characters, and getting to do it again with the same awesome co-stars. Like it's
Kelly.
It just feels like a reuniting of family, after a couple of years, and getting to use some of your life experience into meeting each other again and finding new depth. It's really cool.
It's so good. Oh, love that show so much. And so then you had last year, you had Singing in the Rain, and I was totally blown away by this production. I saw it 3 times. And
really?
Yeah, and Hale's priced these, so that's a lot. Yeah. Well, so the first time I saw the other cast, and then the second time it was on a Saturday, and it was, I think because maybe it was a matinee or whatever, it was like a combined cast, and I still wanted to see you in it. Then I saw the third time.
Oh my gosh.
I absolutely loved this show. I mean, I love the movie, don't get me wrong, but I think it's the best thing Hale's ever made was that production. I really, really do. It capitalized on all of the great things about Hale Sandy, the spectacle, the quality of the singing, the dancing, all of that. And I thought it just had an energy. And I think it was Dale, I think it was who played Cosmo. He was so good.
So good.
He absolutely outstanding. I mean, the whole cast was phenomenal, but I really do. I think it's the best thing they ever made.
Well, that's really cool to hear. It's always fun to hear what people think. And that's the cool thing about here is that they just have such creative people, all the way from design to engineering, and to get to see what they come up with, that they don't limit themselves. They're like, well, why not do this? They always say, like, why let's do this, I mean? And it's really cool to be a part of that synergy here at the theater.
Yeah. And I think it's a pretty good screen to stage adaptation, because not all of those work for me. Like the 7 Brides for 7 Brothers, I was not high on. Like the original songs were good, but all the new songs, not a fan. And I was just underwhelmed. I feel like that happens a lot. I mean, it happens a lot with the Disney ones. I'm very hit and miss on those.
Yeah.
I think that obviously Beauty and the Beast and Lion King, excellent. But I'm not a big fan of the Mary Poppins. I think your wife just did it at her school, but I don't like, I know that they had to do it that way. That was the only way the Travers would give them the rights, the state. So I get it, but I do not like the addition of this nanny.
Miss Andrew. Yeah.
No, I don't like her at all. And how it changes the Mr. Banks's whole character arc, I feel like becomes completely different. And the new songs, not a fan. I don't like any of them. I don't know. I actually liked the new Frozen. I thought that, I mean, especially Monster, I thought that song was amazing.
Very cool.
And I went up and saw it in Denver when they were doing the tryouts.
Cool.
It was so much fun. I actually have an Elsa cosplay, and I wore it to with wig and everything to go see Frozen. And if you ever want like a boost of your spirits, dress up as a Disney princess with a bunch of kids around. You will feel
like
amazing.
$1,000,000.
Yeah. I mean, it really was incredible because I figured I'm like, I so obviously don't look anything like Elsa that, you know, I don't know that they wouldn't, but no, there was.
But that's kids with their imagination.
So
that's why I
cute.
love
Yeah.
kids. They take everything and they use their imagination to fill in the blanks. And
Yes.
they're experiencing things for the first time. So they're so doey-eyed and they are so loving. I think that's awesome. That's super
I was talking to some friends about I can't remember what movie we were talking about, but that could kids like this like slower paced movie? And I was like, my brother, when he was little, had a whole video that was just construction equipment for like an hour, just watching trucks
construction
move. And like, I'm like, they don't require a lot of plot to entertain the kids.
Right.
Yeah.
So funny.
But that must have been like overwhelming to be in this big production with Singing in the Rain. And it's one with such a legacy. People come in with such expectations. Like, how did you go about that?
Yeah, that's a very good point. This was luckily my second time doing Singing in the Rain. The first time I played Cosmo down in Orem. So this is my first time playing Don. And there is like, I think either way, because also Cosmo, I think there's equally as much with Donald O'Connor's performance in the movie. He is iconic, but nobody can touch Gene Kelly's like abilities, like his charisma. So for me, that I had major imposter syndrome when they asked me to come and play Don. I was like, I'm a goofy, lanky, like Danny Kaye type person. Like I ain't no Gene Kelly, but when you kind of think a little bit more about like what he embodied, and it's like more the love of the genre, that's what I think was really cool about Singing in the Rain, is it really encompasses that style and that time period of musical theater where there's just this love for the dance, there's this love for the music that is it's happy, we're not trying to like say something super strongly emotional, we're just trying to show that life is good and is okay. You know what I mean? And focusing on that, I relate, because that's how I feel with musical theater. And so I think trying to encompass the spirit of Gene rather than trying to literally be this really amazing performer, super handsome guy, and I'm this really dorky, lanky guy, I think helped me to kind of find a groove with that a little bit more. But oh my gosh, nothing will ever beat getting to do Singing in the Rain on that stage. Like that moment in time. There's little moments like that for me, like when the first time I flew Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, like flew that car, or like when I did Mary Poppins and I got to walk up a chimney stack. Like there's those moments in your life where you're like, this will stay with me forever. Getting to do the song Singing in the Rain on that stage with the rain falling down and just like loving that moment will stick with me forever. So
it's honestly one of those shows that I wish that it could have like a permanent residency. I don't think I would ever get tired of it. I could just keep going to see it.
Go back.
I really could.
It's funny how everybody has their different tastes. I'll never forget, I was coaching my son's soccer team during that time, and one of the parents on the team came up and was like, "Oh yeah, so you do theater stuff?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, "Oh, I'm currently in the show Singing in the Rain." He's like, "Oh, I hate that show." It's like, okay,
that's funny.
Good for you. And that's the thing, like everybody's got their own taste, and there's some people that just that time period doesn't speak to them, but for me, like I'm a classic musical theater guy through and through. Like I have a soft spot for Hello Dolly and Guys and Dolls and Oklahoma, like some of those that my parents had me watching as a kid. Like those shows have a special place in my heart. So
Hello Dolly, I'm actually kind of like on as far as the story and the songs, but this last production was amazing,
incredible.
I can't believe that train. Like what? That was amazing.
But I think it's the same thing for me with that. Like the little messages you get from that is like, life is so wonderful. Isn't life wonderful? Let's grab onto the moment. Like those those messages, they speak to me, and the music is so happy and nostalgic. I mean, I just grew up watching Barbra Streisand's movie like over and over. I wanted to be Michael Crawford. I feel like a lot of my performance inspiration comes from watching Michael Crawford in that movie, you know.
I just can't stop and think of Wally the whole time I ever anything with Hello Dolly. I'm just thinking of Wally.
Thinking of Wally, yeah, totally.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, Hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
But I have to ask you something about,
Yeah.
I've been dying to know about Hale Theatre.
Yeah.
Did they get rid of the tank?
The
water tank?
The water tank?
Yeah, because why wouldn't they use the water tank for Molly Brown and for Titanic?
You know, it was quite a lot, I think, getting that in. I think they learned a lot from that experience.
Because it was in Treasure Island.
It was in Treasure Island, and I think it was used very well. It was super successful. You know, there's things you don't think about with the humidity that creates in the room, having that much water in there. The cost of doing all that, I think, is a huge factor. But I think also, this is just from my perspective, it was interesting listening to people's responses when they would come see Treasure Island. And I know before we did Treasure Island, they were going to do Titanic before COVID, and they were kind of advertising it as it's going to be this big water, show, spectacular. And you can't ever please everybody. I think so many people came, and Treasure Island, I thought that was incredibly staged, and I thought the uses of the space was so cool. And so many people left that saying, I wanted more water.
Really? Yeah. Well, see, I never would say that. I really liked these. It was a little violent, the show. And for me, I mean, just in the tone and the feel of, I don't know, just everything. It was a little, I thought, I wasn't prepared for a really violent show. Like when I go see Sweeney Todd or something like that, like I know. And I wasn't prepared for it to be kind of a more violent show. And so I think that was my kind of like, oh, I don't know about this. But and for some reason I thought in the advertising that it was a musical. So I was a little bit surprised that it was a play.
Interesting. Well, the cool thing with that is it was a straight play, and Dave was like, I see this as being so cinematic. Like I want this to feel epic. So they actually hired Jay Bateman, who's a local composer, and he composed the music for that show. Like he it's all original music that was composed specifically for that show to make it feel a little bit more cinematic, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, there were a couple songs like pirate shanties and things like that
they kind of added in.
Yeah. But I was when I went to see Molly Brown and when I went to see Titanic, I was like, they're surely going to use the water tank. And then they didn't, and it just surprised me.
Yeah, I think you'll be surprised if you see that again for a while. I think with the cost that was, and also just the interesting response from people.
That is interesting.
They thought it was going to get a lot of bang for its buck. Like people were going to be like, "Oh my gosh, look, this is crazy," and the response was like, "Yeah, there's water. I was hoping for more water." It's like then the realization hit, like. You can't, in theater, it's always about allowing the audience to imagine and create and play. And the more literal you get with stuff, the less people are going to be engaged in the story. And it's the same thing that happens to me whenever people who love a book go and see the movie. And it never reaches the expectation of what the imagination can create in those moments. And I think it was just like, you know what, we probably should direct our use of funds towards things that will give us a little bit more payoff for the audience, that will allow them to be a little bit more a part of the process. So I don't know all the ins and outs. Like these are a lot of these are just my point of view, but it was interesting seeing that as I would go and see the show, I would hear people talk about the water, and I'm like, this show has nothing to do about water. Like water is nothing to do with Treasure Island. Like, it should be more about this stuff, but because it was there, people were like, well, I want it to be about that. And it's like,
Interesting.
we don't want Titanic to be about the water. We want Titanic to be about the people that were on that ship.
Yeah.
Molly Brown should be about Molly Brown, not about the water. So I think that was a huge thing we realized at that moment is people, if you do put water, then all of a sudden the audience makes it all about the water.
Yeah.
Rather than being about the story, about the characters. And so we decided, like, let's gear all of our design more towards what matters and what we want people to walk away with is the story. So
yeah,
anyway,
interesting.
That's my thought.
That's interesting. So what do you think, if you had to pick what is a underrated Broadway show, not necessarily one you've been in, it could be, and an overrated one that people love that you think, not that great?
Man, that's tricky because I have I think I've been doing the business long enough that I see stuff way more from a patron side of like, what do our people want to see and expect to see? And
yeah,
I've had to learn to let go of shows that, like, I know I will never see done here because that's just not what our audiences want to see. And so I might be the wrong person to ask, because I'll think of it more of like, this is one that's underrated that is great for our demographic, or great for, because there's just such a wide array. But like, I just have, like I said, I have such love for classics, the classic theater, and it's hard because most people want the latest and greatest.
Yeah.
But also a lot of the latest and greatest that's coming out is not really appropriate for our audiences. So we're in this weird bubble now here where it's like, we got to start creating new content that really is geared towards our demographic of
for me, and they've done it at Hale and Hale Orm. For me, the most underrated show is Bright Star. I just absolutely love that show. I love the songs. I love the story. I just feel like it has everything that you could want in a show. It's funny, it's emotional, it's dramatic, it's tragic. It's got great dancing. It's got great music. It's, I just absolutely love that show.
There are shows for me that I love with my whole heart that I know not everybody does love. Hunchback is one of those for me that has a really special,
I think
place.
Much better than the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, and again, like, it's weird because it's so opinions are very stratified on some of that. But I love other classics. I love Bells Are Ringing. It's, to me, is one that's underrated. Super cute. I love those, like, just kind of light, fresh, like She Loves Me kind of shows. I love
She Loves Me.
That tend to get kind of glossed over a little bit. So yeah, those are probably some of my
you
favorites.
mentioned Guys and Dolls, and that was another absolutely outstanding production from Hale. I thought that was so good.
Yeah. I love Drowsy Chaperone. I love that show too. Those ones that are a nod to musical theater.
Yeah.
Those are some of my favorites. So.
I saw last year, Catch Me If You Can at Sierra, and I thought it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. I guess in the Broadway version, they used a lot. They had it kind of, the production was sort of weird. They had like a lot of projections, and my friend was telling me to saw it there and he was underwhelmed, but at least the way they did it at Sierra, I thought it was really fun and entertaining, good songs, good. I really enjoyed that. I would say that one I think is underrated.
No, that's a good one too. Those are good ones.
For me, and people that listen to this know this, but for me, one I definitely thought was overrated was 6 on Broadway. I just thought it's really short. It's like 90 minutes. There's no sets. There's no story. It's just like a little, like, it felt like a teeny bopper concert to me. I don't know. I just didn't think it was that great. Everybody loves it. I'm just like Hamilton light, but without all the good stuff.
It's just funny. Like you just start to appreciate more and more, like the cool thing that theater does, and that it allows for people to have lots of different tastes, and there will be things that people will love. And I'm just grateful that people find something in general that they love about any show or don't like, because that means that they're invested about it. And it's I have a hard time finding anything I don't like in any show, just because I'm just so appreciative of the art, and I can find something in everything that I'm like, that was something really cool about that. And
I do. I do often say that I think I'm a better film critic than I am a theater critic because I just love the experience of going
Yeah.
to a show so much, and going out and so I know I'm pretty nice. But yeah, I mean, there's not like, I didn't love the Anastasia adaptation. I don't know if you ever gotten to see that, but
I haven't. Yeah, I haven't got to see
yeah,
Anastasia yet.
I just thought that they took out all the fun. It was so serious. They turned Rasputin into this general, and I understand the need for that, but I just felt like they overcorrected for me.
I think there's shows that probably every show should go through a lot of rewrites, right, before it kind of makes its way out. And I think there's some that need a few more rewrites before they get there. But I'm glad that they're a part of that process. That there is something out there that's happening. I know Prince of Egypt is in the middle of that right now. That went to Tuacahn and is hopefully going to make another round here. And
I want to see that so bad. It's so sad because it was gonna be in the West End, and then it premiered like right during COVID. So so sad.
Yeah, I saw it down in Tuacahn, and that was my first thought with this. Is like, this is a story that's worth telling, and Stephen Schwartz is an incredible composer. It needs some rewrites. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff that you can feel that it's straying away from the path, and the songs aren't quite giving the impact that you would want to have for those characters. So, but I'm sure it's going to get through some awesome rewrites soon.
I have to say, as constructive feedback, I do feel that way about this Hans Christian Andersen in New York. I don't think it's ready.
Yeah,
it wasn't there yet.
Totally. Yeah. And that one's tough because I think that the writers saw this as a workshop for them.
I could feel that.
But it's tough when you're at a theater that is as renowned as this, that has a patron base as this, where they're coming in and expecting final product kind of stuff. We just need to find another venue for workshopping. I think it's so important to do that. I think shows like Hans that are clean and are nostalgic, that are for this demographic of people are needed. But I think we need to have a springboard where we can have more workshopping stuff happen.
It would be nice if Hale had like a black box.
Welcome to the new Beehive building being built here.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
So that'll be awesome.
Because that's what they've been able to do up at Centerpoint, is they have a black box where they can do some of those more experimental stuff, which is fun.
Yep. Totally.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Well, last question.
Yeah.
If you were given the task to turn a movie that hasn't been made into a Broadway musical into a Broadway musical, what would you pick?
Well, I actually did work on a Three Amigos musical a few years ago, and I was kind of in talks with MGM on it, trying to get that one up on its feet, and it just didn't quite come into fruition, and I hope it someday can. I think that would be an amazing musical. One that I have in my back pocket is a Hitch musical. I just think it would be so fun to do a cute kind of love doctor kind of musical like that. And so
that's a good one.
Yeah, that one's one that's kind of been sitting in my someday. I learned a lot from my experience working on the Three Amigos musical, as far as trying to deal with the movie rights kind of people and trying to change the medium into a Broadway show. And so I've been trying to stay clear and say, like, what are some stories that I like from the films, but maybe, because I would love to do a date doctor like that, but like maybe set it in more in the 40s, like a different time period, different characters. But the whole idea of a Hitch kind of type story would be awesome.
That could be really fun. One that I think would make a really good musical is The Quiet Man. Have you ever seen that with John Wayne? I just feel like it has all of I feel like the Irish elements would translate well. And cool. I think it could be fun.
Yeah, that one would be fun. That'd be super cool.
Yeah. So.
One, I can't claim this one. This is one that my friend Kelly Coombs always wanted to see turn into a musical, but there's a movie called, I believe it's Roxanne.
Okay, yeah.
It's the story about the girl with the pig nose. It's kind of like a female Pygmalion kind of a story.
Penelope.
Penelope, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Penelope, that's the one.
Yeah.
So that's one that Kelly Coombs has always wanted to see turned into a musical. She thinks
I
that
can
would
see
be a fun
that.
one. So
Yeah. Get
yeah.
Reese Witherspoon on board.
There you go.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking time to do this. This was so much
Absolutely.
fun. I had a
Yeah,
blast.
thanks for having me.
Yeah. And so if people want to follow you on socials or whatever, how do they do that?
Yeah, so I've got a website. It's just david-paul-smith.com. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook. My handle on Instagram is david.p.smith. And so you can kind of follow there on any projects coming up. Love everybody to come up and check out Newsies opening this summer at the Hale and Sandy's. Incredible talent in this cast, and kind of excited to breathe my own life into that show. And we're going for kind of a dusty Western kind of type setting with that. So it's going to be a really awesome production. So hopefully everybody gets a chance to see that one.
I'm definitely going to see that.
My wife and I are directing Nemo right now, Finding Nemo Jr. for our youth show, and that show has a huge special place in our heart. We saw it in Disney World at Animal Kingdom on our honeymoon 15 years ago, and ever since then we were like, oh, we hope we can work on this show someday. And so having them release that and getting to be one of the first theaters to produce that show in this amazing space is pretty awesome. So
that would be cool too.
Check those shows out.
Very good. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks.
And if you're listening, let us know what you think about things we talked about. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes, and at rachelsreviewstheater.com. Check that out. And if you're listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps. And if you're watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. And I'll put a playlist of all the Theater Tuesday episodes, so please take a look at that. And we have the Patreon group and merch store. Check that out. And thanks so much again. And we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.